in general is in a state of crisis. The consumers don't believe it. The consumers are getting duped by the business people. There has been quite a bit of interesting guidelines coming from what we call the NOP, which is the National Organic Program, that says you have to certify yours a certain way and follow certain instructions. A lot of that is balanced by the fact that there are third-party certifiers who get paid by these companies to certify them. So it's almost like a self-regulatory type system. These certifiers are not doing their job all the way back. There's quite a lot of fake products coming in, specifically imported, in particular in China. Sometimes they're photoshopped, these certificates. Sometimes you don't even know where the raw materials are coming from. You know, I met with someone today who was doing pumpkin protein, and I said, can I see the pumpkin seeds? He said, no, we don't have the pumpkin seeds. I'm like, well, where are they? Oh, they're somewhere else. I'm like, so what kind of protein am I actually getting from you? So these are some of the issues that come up. One of the things that we need to do in this industry is to really monitor ourselves. There's only a certain amount of things that we can do as business people on our end, being suppliers either of raw materials or finished products or finished goods, and it's our responsibility to actually govern this and make sure that we're looking out for the people, the consumers. And so what's happening is a lot of the businesses that are out there, especially a lot of them in here, buy a lower end product because they want to make more margin on their products. They're being stifled by the Costco's of the world who allow you only to make 13 or 14%. And so they want to make a larger margin. So what do? They buy a conventional product, someone slaps a label on it and calls it organic. You know, similar schemes are happening all over the place. They're bringing products in through Canada now, from Canada into the U.S. and calling it a Canadian origin products. So it's a country of origin, not China anymore, it's Canada. This is going on, this is rampant. There are brokers out there that all they do is sell you fake goods. So you don't know whether you're actually getting the real goods unless you actually test it. You gotta test it for microbes, you gotta test it for pesticides, herbicides, GMO. These are things that we should be doing as finished users of the companies, and they're not. The large CPGs came up on conversation outside. They're actually doing more about it. There's something called GRAS, for example, which stands for generally recognized as safe products, which they require. The Kellogg's, the Posts, the Crafts of the world require these products to be GRAS. They actually ask for pesticide results. They actually ask for herbicide results. They actually test your product analytically to actually see what it actually is.
Government doesn't believe you, generally speaking. When it comes to products that you're marketing, the government doesn't believe you. The government doesn't trust you. The government doesn't care if you make a profit. It doesn't care whether your customers get your products. The government really doesn't care. So if you're looking for a hero, don't look at the government, right? If you're looking for somebody who's going to help you with improving your customers' lives, their health, their beauty, their experiences, their nutrition, their sex lives, and their muscle mass, then don't look to the government. The government believes that there's fraud in the industry. This is not in any particular industry, just generally. When the government walks in the door, I can tell you that the inspector's attitude is that there's definitely something wrong. I just have to figure out what it is. How does the government do this? What are they looking for? How are they doing it? They do it through some probably expected techniques and unexpected techniques. FDA does inspections, they do audits. They do rely on third-party audits. Some agencies do. David mentioned USDA and the NOP. They rely on third-party audits. The FDA is starting to go to a third-party audit system. There's never been a third-party audit system that the FDA trusted. The FDA doesn't trust those systems. And yet they were forced under the Food Safety Modernization Act to go to it. They do some of it in the medical device space. They do a lot of testing, and what are they doing? They're looking to determine whether or not, for instance, the label declarations are accurate. They're looking to determine whether there are pesticides in the product. Microbiological contamination. Is the product what it purports to be? That's what they're trying to figure out. All along the way, though, what the government's trying to do is detect anomalies. They're trying to look at data that tells them that there might be some kind of a problem. And they don't only look at your information, they're also getting information from other places. They get tips. The government gets tips. They get tips from consumers with some frequency. A consumer complains about a product, and the government will do an inspection based upon it, or some kind of an investigation. They get tips from other agencies. They get tips from the industry. they get, and then pay attention to this, they get tips from former employees. The government there's a lot of agencies, they actually work together. USDA has jurisdiction over organics, as David was mentioning, but FDA also does, because ordinarily it's food. An article that is in violation of the organic rule because, say, for instance, it lacks certain organic materials that have been put into a product that's purported as organic is also misbranded under Food and Drug Law. If it's imported into the United States, which it probably is, some portion of it, it's also violating customs law. And so all of these agencies they all get involved. It turns out the government, U.S. government, enforces foreign law all the time. They do it under what's called the Lacey Act. If you violate a foreign law related to conservation involving fish and wildlife, and that product comes into U.S. interstate commerce, that's a U.S. federal law violation. So you can violate foreign law and have that actually then become relevant to how the U.S. government evaluates it. FDA regulates labeling. They are ordinarily looking for false and misleading information, and then certain information that must be on the label, or certain things that are not allowed to be on the label. FTC regulates advertising. Labeling is a special form of advertising, so FTC actually does have jurisdiction over labeling, they just don't do anything with it. But the FTC's standards, the way they approach it, are very, very different. FTC is looking for substantiation. Is there evidence that you have to support the claims? And claims enforcement is where the FDA is always looking. When they do an inspection, they come and you think that they're looking at your process and your materials. They're also looking at your labeling and your claims. When I have a client that wants to test market a product, I have to remind them, that is marketing. It counts for the FTC. So even though you're going out to see if the claim is going to work before you have the data, that's marketing a product. If it takes off and you start supplying the product in order to support the market demand, you're running right into an FTC problems. Clean. What does clean actually mean? Right? Everybody talks about clean. It was natural, right? Organic. Now it's clean. The FTC is going to view that as what's called a comparative claim. It's like saying improved. Right, so this product is improved. Well, compared to what? Clean compared to what? That's going to be the question. Say that the important thing is you need to get a guide in order to be the hero, in order to be able to bring the products to market, so that your consumers are able to experience the improved lives. But there's a lot of problems out there you have to watch out for, and that's what we do. Thanks for letting me speak about it.
Our perspective is more along the lines of one of the current great health crises in this country, which is obesity, which has led to diabetes and heart issues, and even some cancers are caused by obesity. And the actual statistics for obesity in this country are very high. Something like 70% of the country is overweight, but of that group, I think maybe 32% of the country is actually in the category of obese, and another 8% are actually morbidly obese. So if you're looking at almost 40% of the country that's suffering from obesity, this is an entirely different issue that we find doesn't really get addressed in this industry. It's kind of like the elephant in the room. It's just simply, even though it's there, we're talking about all kinds of other health issues, but this one's never directly addressed. In our world, what's real, what's not real is you'll pick up a box of the new protein Cheerios that have something like 11 grams of protein, but then you look more closely and right there on the front of the box it'll say with milk. Then you go get the carton of milk and you look at the carton of milk and that's 8 grams protein, so it's like, wow, that's kind of, on the front of the package they admit that this is, this is a little bit skewed. Or they'll give you 12 grams of protein for a serving, but the serving will be 56 grams. And that's a 2-ounce serving right there. So you have to eat 2 ounces and it's going to double your calories just to get to those 12 grams of protein. So that's our piece of what's real, what's not real. And so the question is, well, why should the natural foods industry care about this issue? Why should that rise, higher as a priority? And the reason would be that this is already an industry that's committed itself to first do no harm. We are all agreed on that. We're on the same page on that. We don't want to bring harm to our consumers. But the next piece of that is that we really need to be looking at, is an organic Oreo cookie going to do anybody any good? What's the point, right? So our concern would be that this epidemic is actually it costs $150 billion annually in healthcare costs. It causes 300,000 premature deaths a year. It is responsible for diseases such as, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, sleep apnea, joint issues, metabolic syndrome, and even breast, colon, and prostate cancer. That we start keeping in mind the overall health of the consumer, not just in terms of what the ingredient is, but also the mix of the ingredients, the nutritional balance that we're offering.
The number one epidemic facing kids in America today, according to the U.S. Surgeon General, is tooth decay. Now, tooth decay is a preventable disease. You brush your teeth and you think, I won't get cavities, everything is going to be fine. You think you're taking all the precautions. But what a lot of people don't know is that it's what you eat. It's how our food supply has changed over the years. Because, first of all, there is way too much acid and sugar in our food supply. And I'm not standing here saying I'm going to change the food supply, but I'm saying that we can trace it back to the source. And that's what I'm doing, through my company. But also, it's a question of why. Why is our food supply like this? And that's for two reasons. Reason number one, people like sugar and carbs. It's simple. It sells. And another reason is it has an extended shelf life. It's stable. It's easy for companies to put some sugar, put some carbs in a product, put it on shelves, and not have to worry about it for the next couple of months, couple of years, depending on the product. Well, foods that are more acidic equals a longer shelf life. I can educate the next generation to make better choices. And I think that, we can also change candy eating patterns. Candy doesn't have to be something that's bad for you.
Women outside the U.S. had a very proactive approach to beauty versus a very reactive approach that we have here, where we wait for something to happen and then we run in and we try to fix it. The U.S. laws for ingredients haven't changed since 1925. It's literally like the wild, wild west right now in beauty here, because if you're an influencer, you can order something from China and throw it up for sale, and it really is not regulated. And what we're seeing is what's happening in the world is in the EU, they have very strict regulations. So if you are making products here in the US and you're not following EU or global compliance regulatory issues, you can't sell your products anywhere outside the US. I could create a product here in the US, let's say it's an oil, an essential oil, and I could put it on the market tomorrow. If we were to go into the EU, we would have to pretty much provide certification, allergen testing, material safety data sheets for every single ingredient in that product. And if one of those ingredients had a blend, we would need to break down that blend and provide the same amount of certification per each ingredient that made up that one blended oil. So it's very strict. That they're finding that a lot of these ingredients are hormone disruptors, and a lot of women are having issues, and men actually, from using these unregulated ingredients. The US fell to the 37th healthiest country in the world, and that was because of overuse of prescribed medications, and two, because of our food source being modified, unregulated, this desire for healthy foods but not really knowing if you are getting those healthy foods. What you're seeing is counterfeit issues coming in. Kylie Jenner's a great example of someone who apparently just got named the youngest self-made billionaire in the US, but she did great work with her lip kit, and you can pretty much go anywhere and buy her lip kit now, and it's counterfeit. And what they found is that a lot of these lip kits were coming from China, and they actually had glue in them. So people were having really severe reactions, and their lips were getting stuck from using a product that was not a real product. And the counterfeiting doesn't stop there. I have a colleague in the industry who had an amazing product. They were doing about $1 million a month in sales, and a Chinese company would actually hijack their website and hacked it to where if you were to go on the website to buy the product, it would take you to the counterfeit site, and they would sell you the counterfeit product. So they pretty much went out of business because their sales dropped from $1 million a month to about $10,000 a month, and they were no longer able to stay in business. What I do like, and what is happening in the cosmetics industry here in the US, is we have a very savvy consumer now. We've got women that are really interested in wanting, and men, to do things that are good for them. They want to know what they're putting on their face. They don't want to just buy a blue eyeshadow. And because of that, we are starting to see a little bit more enforcement. We've got the environmental working group, the EWG, that's come out with a set of standards of what they believe is safe and clean that can go into cosmetics. We're also seeing the FDA start to step in a little bit more. They just came out yesterday actually that Claire's, they had found asbestos. And then just to go to what Ben was saying on the FTC and FDA, being that I've done a lot of television, and what we are kind of seeing, to your point, David, is there are a lot of people that are making claims on packaging that is not substantiated. And I know that, with the FTC, they are very strict. So if you go and veer off even a little bit to the right, you will get a nice fine and a nice warning letter. So in that aspect, it's great, but you really do need to do your due diligence and your homework as to what you're putting on your skin and who's making it, and are the claims substantiated? I mean, do they have anything to back up these claims? Have they done the correct testing? And a lot of companies won't invest in that testing because it's at least over $100,000.
The loss of my brother to cancer, and he had really a very terrible, ungraceful, pain-ridden, symptom uncontrolled end of life, and I wondered if cannabis could have helped him. And then the more I studied it, the more I realized we really did miss an opportunity there. So I've got videos on really any condition that you would want to use cannabis on, and if I don't have the video, I'll shoot the video. But most folks worry about whether or not CBD or cannabis is going to actually work, if there's any studies. And so I wanted to make sure that I had a product that presented the research in a way that was very digestible for anybody who wanted to know in quick 3-minute videos real value in what the food industry is doing with creating interesting edibles, fizzy drinks, going way beyond brownies. So many people feel uncomfortable with a vape pen or uncomfortable with a tincture, but would happily swallow a gummy bear to see if something is going to work. So what the food industry is doing with the addition of CBD in all their products is revolutionary and very exciting, and it's going to help to bring these products forward quicker, which is what everybody with these issues needs. And they need great education. Studies show that dispensary workers have about an hour of education before they go behind the cash register, and most of that education is on business and not on how to what drug is appropriate. Oftentimes they're pushing the product that's getting close to its expiration date. So people need to come to the dispensary really armed with great data, rather than showing up with the idea that somebody's going to be pharmautically trained there. JAMA research recently showed that 25% of CBD products are mislabeled, that it's over or underrepresented how much CBD is in the dropper full. And some of that may just relate to distillation processes, because it's a sticky molecule, and if the distillation isn't adequate, or if there's some chemical residues that persist, you can have problems with the CBD being inconsistent dropper full to dropper full. We have ADHD and tics and Tourette's and insomnia and chronic pain and anxiety, just a slew of really wonderful patient educational videos if they're needed for your organization.